Have you ever wondered how the United States, a collection of 13 British colonies, became the global superpower it is today? It's a sprawling, epic story filled with rebellion, innovation, conflict, and a relentless pursuit of an idea called freedom. So grab your popcorn, because we're about to take a whirlwind tour through American history in just 10 minutes. Our story begins long before 1776, with diverse Native American civilizations flourishing across the continent. Fast forward to the late 15th century, when a certain Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue. His arrival sparked a wave of European exploration and colonization. The Spanish, French, Dutch, and especially the English all wanted a piece of this new world. By the 1700s, 13 British colonies had been established along the Atlantic coast. Life was tough, but these colonies developed their own unique identities. People from different backgrounds came, seeking religious freedom, economic opportunity, or simply a fresh start. But this new life came at a tremendous cost to the native populations and was built on the brutal foundation of the transatlantic slave trade, which brought millions of Africans to the Americas in chains. Now, let's talk about the spark that lit the revolutionary fire. The colonists grew tired of British rule, especially the taxes imposed without their consent. No taxation without representation became their rallying cry. Tensions boiled over with events like the Boston Tea Party. Finally, on July 4, 1776, the Continental Congress adopted the Declaration of Independence, a bold statement proclaiming that all men are created equal and have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Of course, declaring independence is one thing, winning it is another. The American Revolutionary War was a long, hard-fought struggle. Against all odds, with a little help from the French, George Washington's Continental Army defeated the mightiest military power on earth. With victory came a new challenge: how to govern this brand new nation. Their first attempt, the Articles of Confederation, was a bit of a flop. It created a weak central government that couldn't get much done. So, in 1787, the nation's leaders gathered in Philadelphia to draft a new blueprint: the U.S. Constitution. This remarkable document established a federal system with 3 branches of government: legislative, executive, and judicial, creating a system of checks and balances that's still in place today. As the 19th century dawned, the young nation began to expand. The Louisiana Purchase in 1803 doubled the size of the country overnight, fueling a belief in manifest destiny, the idea that the U.S. was destined to stretch from coast to coast. This expansion led to pioneers heading west on trails like the Oregon Trail, but it also led to forced removal of Native American tribes and the Mexican-American War, which added even more territory to the U.S. While the nation grew, a deep and bitter divide was widening between the North and the South. The Northern economy was industrializing, while the Southern economy remained agrarian, dependent on the labor of enslaved people. The conflict over slavery and states' rights became a powder keg waiting to explode. In 1861, it finally did. The election of Abraham Lincoln, who opposed the expansion of slavery, prompted Southern states to secede and form the Confederacy. The result was the American Civil War, the deadliest conflict in U.S. history. For 4 brutal years, brother fought against brother. The turning point came with the Union victory at Gettysburg and Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation, which declared slaves in Confederate territory to be free. In 1865, the Confederacy surrendered. The Union was preserved and slavery was abolished by the 13th Amendment. The period after the war, known as Reconstruction, was a time of great hope and great struggle. Efforts were made to rebuild the South and integrate nearly 4 million newly freed African Americans into society. But this progress was met with fierce resistance, and by the late 1870s, a system of segregation and discrimination known as Jim Crow would take hold in the South, creating a legacy of inequality that would last for generations. The late 19th and early 20th centuries were an era of explosive growth, known as the Gilded Age. Industrial tycoons like Carnegie and Rockefeller built massive fortunes. Railroads crisscrossed the continent, and cities swelled with immigrants from Europe and Asia seeking the American dream. It was a time of incredible innovation. Think electricity, telephones, and the first automobiles. But it was also a time of harsh working conditions, urban poverty, and political corruption. This led to the Progressive Era, a period of social activism and political reform. People fought for women's suffrage, workers' rights, and regulations to break up monopolies. This spirit of change set the stage for America's entry onto the world stage. In 1917, the U.S. entered World War I, tipping the scales in favor of the Allies and establishing itself as a major global power. The 1920s roared with jazz music, flappers, and economic prosperity. But it all came crashing down with the stock market crash of 1929, plunging the country and the world into the Great Depression. President Franklin D. Roosevelt responded with the New Deal, a series of programs and reforms that fundamentally changed the role of the federal government in American life, providing a social safety net for citizens. Just as the nation was recovering, it was pulled into another global conflict, World War II. The attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941 thrust the U.S. into the war. The nation's industrial might became the arsenal of democracy, and millions of men and women served in the armed forces. The war ended in 1945 after the U.S. dropped atomic bombs on Japan, ushering in the nuclear age. The post-war era saw the U.S. emerge as one of two global superpowers. Locked in a tense ideological struggle with the Soviet Union known as the Cold War, this period was marked by the space race, threat of nuclear annihilation, and proxy wars in places like Korea and Vietnam. Back home, the 1950s and 60s were a time of both suburban comfort and profound social upheaval. The civil rights movement led by figures like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. used nonviolent protests to challenge segregation and demand equal rights. Landmark legislation like the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965 dismantled the legal basis for segregation, though the fight for true equality continues. This era also saw a counterculture movement, protests against the Vietnam War, and the fight for women's rights and gay rights gained momentum. The Cold War finally ended with the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991.
Leaving the United States
as the world's sole superpower. The late 20th and early 21st centuries have been defined by the digital revolution, globalization, and new challenges. The September 11th attacks in 2001 ushered in the war on terror and reshaped American foreign policy and domestic security. We've seen economic crises, debates over healthcare and immigration, and a growing awareness of social and racial injustice. From a handful of rebellious colonies to a complex, diverse nation of over 330 million people, the history of the United States is a story of constant change, conflict, and reinvention. It's a story of striving for the ideals laid out in its founding documents, often falling short but always pushing forward. It's a history that's still being written every single day. Thanks for joining me on this incredibly fast journey through American history. If you enjoyed this, hit that like button, subscribe for more deep dives, and let me know in the comments what part of history you'd like to explore next.